Good morning, everyone. Welcome this morning to Unity Church of the Hills. For all of you who are joining us online, welcome to you on YouTube and Facebook as well. We enfold you here in the sanctuary as if you were here with us already. We know you are in spirit, and we want to thank you again for joining us this morning. So we are in the fourth of 6 weeks of our series on prosperity based on Kyle Cease's book, The Illusion of Money. How many are actually tracking this with the book? Y'all got the book? It's a wonderful book. The chapters are really easy to get through. He doesn't bog you down with a whole bunch of details. He stays real focused on a specific topic, and each one of the chapters kind of ends with an assignment. Today we're covering chapters 9 and 10 in the book. In the previous 3 weeks, Reverend Cherie covered the first 6 chapters in her 2 weeks of talks. She'll be back in the next week and the following week to conclude the series. In those first weeks, we were talking mostly about kind of breaking down illusions that we might have about money, security, false beliefs that we've formed over the course of time. And then she got into areas where we're sort of recalibrating how we establish value in the world, and most particularly how we establish value for ourselves and establishing that self-value, self-esteem. Anybody ever struggled with unworthiness issues, those kinds of things? That seems like an ongoing process for us that we have to continue to surrender to that over and over and over. It's a consistent process through the course of our life, and each time we surrender to an aspect of ourselves that feels unworthy or disconnected, separated from God, where unforgiveness might reside, grievances that we hold against ourselves, against others, all those things that are preventing us from actually just being with, in the present moment, our divine self. We put all kinds of things in the way, and that's what a lot of the breaking down those illusions are about, is kind of seeing through that to where we can get to the capital R reality about who and what we are and how much power we have, really. Like even when we think we don't have power, we're actually really, really powerful at convincing ourselves that we don't have any power, right? It kind of works that way because we are powerful. That is our nature. It just depends on how and where we're directing that creative power that we have, because we can create whatever kind of experience we want to have. And sometimes we can create an experience that is built on a false premise, built on an illusion, an untruth. I know I've done that many, many times, and I'll probably do it again before I pass on through this world. But with tools like these that Kyle gives us in The Illusion of Money and other places as well, we have those tools to give us some resilience to respond and to rebound from those episodes that we might have. And hopefully, the better we get at walking our walk as we get over, those episodes are briefer and briefer. We don't spend as much time in the weeds before we course correct and get back on track. In last week's talk, Reverend Cindy talked about, there was one chapter was dealing with the Three Helens. You might recall the Three Helens were 3 women who theoretically got $1 million, and they had different experiences about how they went about using that $1 million. And one of them spent it on enjoyment, spent it on entertainment, spent it on, sort of experience in the world, so to speak, and buying things, right? And the second one kind of invested and took a more conservative approach to it. The third one invested in herself, right? She used that money to get herself into alignment with her authentic self, and then she used those resources that she had at her disposal to further her authentic experience, right? Now, how many of us would see ourselves doing that? Like if you had $1 million today and all the time in the world, how many would actually invest in yourself and do that, get yourself into alignment with your soul's deepest calling? That's one of the things that Kyle talks about in the chapters that we're going to cover today, is how to get ourselves into alignment with our soul's calling, with the deepest part of ourselves, the part of ourselves that's most authentic, and the part of ourselves that, quite frankly, as A Course in Miracles would say, to us, that we are, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond all measure. It's like, wow, what a paradigm shift, right? Why would I be afraid of my power? right? Why would I be afraid of my power? Well, because if you assume your power, then you also have to assume responsibility for your experience. And I believe it's that assumption of responsibility for our personal experience that keeps us sometimes this side of the line instead of moving through that barrier that we put between us and a greater experience. And so books like Kyle's book, The Illusion of Money, it's not just about money. Money seems to be a trigger. We all want to, we all want to have a healthy relationship with money, and hopefully a lot of chips in the bank to go along with that healthy relationship with money. But money is just a symbol for that external security in the world. And the whole thing about breaking through the illusion of money or anything like that is to get us back down to where our sense of security, our sense of identity is from within. It's from within our being. It's from within the awareness and the knowledge of the truth that we are indeed divine beings. We are children of God. We are created to be co-creators of this experience. And we are indeed co-creating this experience. That is not really up for debate. We are co-creating the experience. The variable is, what exactly are we co-creating with our power? And we create a whole range of things in this world, don't we? Like the whole range. Sometimes we create from fear, or as A Course in Miracles will say, we make things up from fear, or we create from love. There's a distinction between which of those is real. And so when we're talking about the illusion of money or any kind of illusion, what we're really breaking through in that paradigm is getting to that place to where we ground ourselves in the truth, the capital T truth, right? The capital T truth of who and what we are and what kind of power we actually have in this world. And then as we mature and as we continue walking that walk, hopefully we mature, right? Hopefully we mature with the responsibility and being and wielding that power in responsible ways, not only to others, but probably more importantly to ourselves. You'll recall a couple of weeks ago, Reverend Shree was talking about, valuing ourselves and how we can recalibrate that. We're going to talk about, in today's talk, an exercise that Kyle suggests and everything about how we can get ourselves into alignment, how we can know that we are in alignment with those deeper values. That's chapter 9, but I'm going to do chapter 9 last today. We're going to flip the script a little bit. I'm going to do chapter 10 first, which is talking about hoarding the past, right? Anybody? I'm a collector. I collect vinyl albums. Some of y'all know that. I've got about 6,000 or so vinyl albums, about 2,000 CDs, and several hundred books. Yes, you can imagine the space that takes up, right? I call myself a collector. My wife would call myself a hoarder, okay? So it's hoarding all those physical objects. And I've been carting some of these records around since I was 14 years old. Every time I move, I got to pack them up. Every time I move, I got to buy more U-Haul boxes to pack them up in. There was periods in time when I didn't have a turntable, so I had to rent a mini storage to store my records, right? So there was many years where they were packed away and I didn't have them. And then that glorious day when I would be able to go get them out and unpack them. And it was like Christmas all over again. Oh, I forgot I had this record and that record. And you're setting them up and everything. Well, now I've got a lot of them on display. And they take up a lot of space. They take up a lot of space in our home. My wife is constantly reminding me about how much space they take up in our home. She's very efficient. She can let things go very efficiently. Once the utility has sort of worn off and everything, it's like she'll give it away. She'll call it, put it on next door app and everything, put it out on the curb. Somebody will come get it. She can release really, really easily like that. Me, I've never let go of anything that didn't have claw marks in its back, right? Not yet. I'm not ready to let go of that just yet. Well, yesterday I had an experience preparing for this and everything. I was like, okay, so I'm gonna go start packing up some more vinyl records. And I was a little bit more ruthless with myself yesterday in letting go of that. Where I would, like my tell yesterday was, do I really see myself as listening to this record? And if I couldn't answer that I would see myself listening to that record, it went in the box. And I felt really, really good. By the end of the day, I'd boxed up like 3 boxfuls of records yesterday. However, I was boxing up those records to make room for the books. that I had been accumulating. You know, they were kind of all like laying around and everything. I said, I need to put some of these books in shelves and stuff. Well, you got to let go of some stuff. You got to clear some shelf space out. But it's one of those things, as I was doing that yesterday, I was reminded of a book that I read in the late 90s. My mother had recommended it. Some of y'all might have read it before. It's called God on a Harley. Anybody ever read that book by Joan Brady? In this, God shows up literally as a Harley rider named Joe, right? And the story revolves around this woman who's a nurse who had moved back to the West Coast from the East Coast after an affair she had with a doctor on the West Coast had gone wrong, and so she moved away to the East Coast, and after many, many years, she moves back to the West Coast, goes back to the same hospital where the doctor is now married to an old friend of hers as well, so she's back there. And she meets Joe, God on a Harley kind of guy. And so Joe takes her through this process where he, instead of 10 commandments, there was a very individualized course. And instead of commandments, they were commitments, right? And so you might have 10 commitments that you have to meet in this lifetime. You might only have 2 or 3. The woman in the story, she had 6. She had 6 commitments that she had to master in her life. And one of those was letting go of the past and letting go of stuff that was attached to the past. And there's a key scene in the book where she and Joe are at her apartment and they're going through her closet, right? And Joe has told her that she needs to let go of some of these clothes. And so she starts pulling things out one at a time, and there's this nice dress that she wore at some function like 10 years before, and she goes, I really like this dress. I might wear this again. She wants to put it back on the hanger. Joe says, no, you got to let that go. I don't want to let that go. I remember where I was. I was with him. He made her understand as they were going through this inventory in her closet that it wasn't actually the dress she was holding on to. It was the memory of where she was and what she was doing when she last wore the dress that she was holding on to. The dress really had no further utility for her in her life. So basically, after Joe got through going through this inventory with her in her closet, she had about 5 pairs of jeans and a few shirts and stuff like that, and she let go of a whole bunch of stuff. I tell you that story because every time I'm in my closet and I look at the stuff that I'm not wearing, I think about that scene. And I imagine myself, I wish I had a Joe there going like, Rick, you gotta let go of that. You're not gonna wear it. But I might, just like I might listen to this record that I haven't listened to. I bought records along the way as a collector that just, hey, good copy. Oh yeah, I don't see this very often. I'll bring it home. And put it in the shelf, and that's where it stayed. I never even actually listened to it. Just had to have it, right? And the thing about collecting records is there's always more records to collect, right? It never ends. And now I'm in that process, thanks to this book and my wife's constant reminder, that, you let go of some of these things. And even the books, I'm not really making a joke about making room for the books. That's really what's going on. But even in that process, it's like, I need to let go of some books too, right? I went to storage the other day and got 6 boxes of books out to see what all I had packed away before, right, to add to these books. There's a lot of books. And they're not like vinyl albums where they're all kind of thin and you can put a whole bunch of them in a shelf. It's like some of them big old fat books and this, that. No, they take up a lot of space, right? And so I have to maybe come to reconcile that I might be more than a collector at this point in time. I might indeed be a hoarder, right? Hoarder of these things. And in some way, my identity is wrapped up in those. All those records I bought over the course of time. Being a completist, have to have every record by an artist, even though I only listen to 1 or 2 of them. I got to have them all, right? And as you do that, your life gets clogged up. It gets congested. You've all heard that stuff before, that if you want to bring something new into your life, you have to let go. You have to start moving some stuff out to create the space for that new to come in. And that's essentially what Kyle is reminding us here in this chapter on hoarding your past, that it's not just these physical objects and everything, it's the memories we have attached to those, right? But that memory is actually within us. The memory's not in the physical object. The memory is within our being. It's part of our history, right? The question is, am I attached to my past history? If I'm attached to my past history, I'm not fully present in the moment. A couple weeks ago, I guess it's been now, Thich Nhat Hanh passed away. Any Thich Nhat Hanh fans in here? I'm a big Thich Nhat Hanh. I've been following his decline over the last couple of years. We kind of knew that he was, passing on. I was reminded last week after hearing the news that the last couple of years of his life, he had lost the ability to speak, in those last couple of years. And I think it might have been Frank and Neil and I, we were walking the other day, we started talking about that. Isn't that interesting? That he kind of lost his voice at the end. But when you think about it metaphysically, he'd already said everything he needed to say in this lifetime. There was nothing really new that he needed to say. He covered it all, right? And it's the same thing. If for those of you who have studied Buddhism or maybe practiced Buddhism and everything, you know that process of being a practicing Buddhist is a constant process of surrendering to the present moment, right? Buddhists are definitely not hoarding the past, right? That whole process is letting go of even 5 minutes ago, 5 seconds ago, to be fully present right here, right now. And this is essentially what Kyle is encouraging us to move into, to release the past so that we can be fully present to the right here, right now. Because it's being present to the right here, right now, that's where our value is. That's where our creative power lies. And we are exercising our creative power at all times. It just depends on which direction we are, using it and employing it. So how do we know if we are using our power to facilitate our greatest good? How do we know if we are using our power to move into the fullest authentic expression of our divinity that we can? Well, fortunately, Kyle has a little strategy for us. He calls it the average amount of alignment. AAA, average amount of alignment. And what he does is he suggests that, and I want to suggest we'll take a moment here just to kind of do a quick little exercise on this. I want to just encourage you just for a moment, maybe just to gently close your eyes as I prompt you here. And I want you to think about, without judgment, think about all the kinds of things that you do during the course of your day, during your week, your month. What are your routines? What are your habits? And I'm talking about everything from the grocery store that you shop at, the products you buy, whether you journal, whether you exercise, what foods you eat, what foods you don't eat, what job you have, everything you can think of. And just kind of see yourself making a mental list of all of those activities without judgment. Just note it. I do this, I do that. I do that, I do this. Kind of get that into your head. Your consciousness should be like popcorn right now, just firing off with all the different kinds of things that you involve yourself in, that you spend your time doing. The next step in this process, you can open your eyes right now, because the next step in the process is part of your homework assignment this week for you to do, should you choose to accept your mission, as it were. And that is to literally, take a piece of paper, a journal, whatever you have, and do that process of literally writing down everything you can think of that you are doing with your time without judgment. There may be things in there that you're doing with your time. You may be spending time at a job that you don't like. You may be spending time at a job that is not fulfilling your soul, that is not moving you towards your soul's purpose, right? But you spend a good bit of your time, your physical time, in this job that is not fulfilling your purpose, that is not bringing you happiness. So you got to bag that. You got to put that on the list. If you're spending 40 hours a week at a job that you don't like, that's not fulfilling your purpose, that's a significant amount of your time. That's about 25% of your time, not counting the time that you might be getting ready for work and traveling back and forth to work and everything. When you start bagging it like that and tagging it like that, looking at it, it's like, that's a big sizable chunk of my life that I am invested in. And usually we're invested in that because we see that job as our source for our money, our income, and we see our income as the source of our security. And we already know the illusion of money, right? That our security is not in the money. The money is a demonstration, the result, the consequence of how we're employing our creative power, our creative services, and so forth. and we get that exchange in the marketplace, so to speak. But the job's not our source. The money's not our source. Our source is within. And that's what that figuring out what that average amount of alignment is. Alignment with what? Alignment with your deepest soul's calling. That's what. And so what Kyle suggests, and this is the nature of your assignment this week for you to do, is to take that list, and like I said, make that list without judgment. Just simply write down in detail everything that you can think of that you're doing. Some of the things might seem, really, small and trivial and everything, but they're not for this purpose. You want to put it down. If you're spending your time doing it, put it down on the list. And then after you've accumulated your list, then you're going to go back and start making some value judgments, right? And Kyle has this scale from 0 to 10. You'll recall Reverend Cindy last week talking about the 10s, right? That was one of the subjects that she covered last week. Well, that carries over into this exercise on the average amount of alignment. The 10 would be something that would fulfill your soul. That would be something that when you think about it, it really brings that buoyancy and energy to your soul. It's your deepest soul's calling. It could show up in any number of ways in this world. So anything that kind of gets your soul moving, that's on the upper end of the scale up towards the 10s. And anything that brings you down, your energy goes down when you think about having to do these things, you rate those lower, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever it is, right? And you make some sort of value judgment. After you've completed that list, then you add up the number of things on your list. In his book, he gives an example in the book of only 10 things. I don't think there's anybody in this room that's only going to have a list with 10 items on it, right? You did more than 10 things just this morning getting here, right? So your list should really be long. So whatever that number is on the list that you put down there, let's call it 100. Let's say I got 100 items on my list. And then I add up all the 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, all the way up to the 10s for the different things, and I get a cumulative number of all, what's my cumulative number of all my activities, and then I divide it by the number of items. And I'm going to come out with a number somewhere between 1 and 10, right? That number that you come up with, that's your average amount of alignment. Right? That's your average amount of alignment. I'm doing some things that are getting close to a 10. I'm doing many, many things that are probably 4, 5, 6. And I'm doing several things that are 1, 2, and 3 that are really dragging me down. But once you begin to see what those things are and you've placed a value judgment on it, now you can say, well, you know what, this week I think I'm going to focus in on a couple of these 1, 2s, and 3s, and I'm not going to do them this week. I'm going to let that go. I'm going to change that up. And then next week, redo your list. I took these out. I didn't do those this week, and then recalibrate your average amount of alignment. That number should go up. And the further north it goes towards the 10, then you're leading that life that is fulfilling your deepest soul's calling. And that's the purpose of all this, right? The purpose of all this, the reason why we come to Unity Church of the Hills or any spiritual community, we say we work on transformation here, right? We're transforming lives. Well, to transform your life implies that you are moving closer and closer to your soul's calling, that you are aligning yourself with your deepest soul's calling. That's the purpose of spiritual work. That's the purpose of spiritual transformation, to move us into that experience. I want to read a little quote. This is from Kyle's book. This is on the chapter about the average amount of alignment. And this brings up the 10s that Reverend Cindy talked about last week. When you are living in a 10, you're creating a massive space for the universe to co-create with you in each moment. 10s are your gold. They're your goal also, but they're your gold. They're your currency. Don't look for money anymore. Look for 10s. I remember back in the late 70s, maybe early 80s, it seems like it's in the late 70s. That was my first period of reading a bunch of spiritual books and self-help books. I was reading Dr. Wayne Dyer and stuff like that. And somewhere along in that process, I remember seeing a book. And the book was titled, Do What You Love, and the money will follow. Anybody remember that book by any chance? Do What You Love and the Money Follow. I never actually read the book. The title was good enough. I mean, the title said everything that I needed to know, right? Do what you love and the money will follow. I didn't necessarily follow that advice right away. It took me some years before you know what? Maybe I should try it that other way, what that suggestion was. And it was probably the mid-90s after I crashed from my previous life and everything and recreated myself. That's when I started following that advice. Do what you love and the money will follow. That I was looking at what I love as being my source as opposed to the money as being in my source. It was a paradigm shifter. I'm sure many of you have had similar experiences in your own life where you had to come to that crossroad and had to make a decision to walk the path differently in the future, right? And that's what this average amount of alignment helps us to see. It gives us a grade, so to speak. We're not to be harsh on ourselves, but we do need to be honest with ourselves when we're looking at that list. Is this thing that I'm doing, that I'm spending time on, is it really fulfilling my soul? Is it really giving me spiritual resilience? Is it really moving the ball forward in my life? And if it's not, then we need to start making room for something that is. And that's what this whole process is about. Not everything from our past is a bad or negative thing, right? Your history is what made you who you are today. Everything about your history that brought you to this room this morning is part of your being. But that memory is encoded within you. It's not in the objects that you've accumulated in your experience. That we should get ourselves to be sort of lean and mean, as it were. That we can trim things down in terms of what we're attaching our value to in terms of physical objects. And get, instead of being attached, get connected with what is our divinity and what is our power. In a few minutes, we're going to go into a meditative experience and attempt to take this a little deeper into our experience. But I want y'all to be thinking about what that assignment is this week. I promise you, there's value in it. There's value in doing this inventory. To get it out of your head and onto a piece of paper where you can physically see it. You can physically see it, and you can. This list should be long, folks. I mean, really, if you're doing this exercise right, it should take you a little while to do it, actually, right? It should take you 30. Give yourself 30 minutes and just write down every single thing that you can think of, no matter how trivial. Put it down if you're spending time on it, and then begin to do that calculation, finding out what your average amount of alignment is with your soul's deepest call. In the meditation, we're going to take that a little deeper. For now, we're going to invite our good musical team back up here to get us into a meditative mode, and I'll be back in just a few minutes to lead us in the meditation. Set me Yes, indeed. Be glorified. Be glorified. It is God's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. It's there for us. Our work is to prepare ourselves to receive it. And then as we receive that good, as we receive the keys to the kingdom, to learn to employ that in a responsible way, in a way that facilitates our transformation. As we prepare ourselves for the time in the silence, I just encourage you right now just to simply focus on your own breathing. If you're comfortable and you haven't done so already, I invite you to gently close your outer eyes and just be with that breath. For a moment, allow that awareness to come in that is God breathing you. That we are inspired with God's good. We are inspired with God's creative power in each and every breath. That precious gift that is given to us in grace. We didn't have to do anything to earn it. It is God's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. It is God's good pleasure to be breathing you. We do our work to feel that pleasure, to receive it, to accept it, and to accept the truth of our own divinity, our own connection with that source, that connection that is inviolable, unbreakable. We can lose sight of it, but we can never actually lose it. We are connected in that power, in that presence. It's the source of all of our power, the source of all of our good. And as we prepare ourselves for that time in the silence to connect with that indwelling source, that inner teacher, I encourage you to be still and know. Be still and know that you are in the midst of the power and the presence that activates all life in the universe, including your own. It's right here, right now. It's with you wherever you are. That source of your power, the source of your good. Nothing is lacking. The only thing we need to supply is our own attention and our own intention to connect with that inner teacher that gives us guidance that never fails. Never fails. Whatever you need is provided for you. Whatever you need is even now moving towards you. Ours is to prepare the soil of our own consciousness to be ready to receive and to use that good that is coming to us to facilitate not only our own transformation, but the transformation of the world. And so in the silence, we ask for that divine guidance. What is mine to release today? What can I release today? Right here, right now, that can facilitate my growth, that can encourage my transformation. It's there. You probably already know the answer. So just be still and know that your inner teacher is right here, right now to give you that advice. What do I need to release today? Right here. Right now, in the silence. And as we begin to gently draw our attention back into this space, we do so in the awareness that wherever we are, God is, and all is well in our life. There is a divine order revealing itself even now that can move me into a more appropriate alignment with my soul's calling. My inner teacher can guide me in that process to where I can release that from the past which no longer serves my present good. That I can learn to be with those things that I need to still be with for yet a little while longer before I release them, as my ongoing growth and transformation moves me closer to my deepest soul's calling. Everything I need is provided for me. There is nothing lacking. There is no lack. There is only good. There is only supply of infinite divine ideas, infinite good, and all of it there for my claiming, for my receiving, for my utility. And so for all of this good and so much more, we are ever, ever so grateful. And so we say thank you, thank you, thank you, living, loving Spirit. We pray all of this and more in the name and the nature of Jesus, the indwelling Christ. And so it is, and so we allow it to be. Amen.